U.S. President Joe Biden arrived in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, hoping to tackle a host of issues, from global oil production to confronting Iran, but almost immediately drew criticism for this moment, a fist bump with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. U.S. intelligence believes the prince, also known as MBS, ordered the murder of the American-based Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018. MBS denies involvement.
With respect to the murder of Khashoggi, I raised it at the top of the meeting, making it clear what I thought of it at the time and what I think of it now. In
a news conference, Biden said he addressed the journalist's murder with the prince.
He basically said that he was not personally responsible for it. I indicated I thought he was.
And insisted he'd never remained silent on the subject of human rights. The visit to the kingdom was always going to be a delicate one. As a presidential candidate, Biden called for Saudi Arabia to be made a, quote, pariah on the global stage, a sentiment he said he did not regret.
I don't regret anything that I said. What happened to Khashoggi was outrageous.
But Biden now needs Riyadh and other key oil producers to raise output as global fuel costs soar.
The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Jeddah hosts a larger gathering of Arab leaders on Saturday. Biden will discuss energy security with leaders of Gulf oil producers and hopes to see more action by OPEC Plus to boost output. But U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told reporters there were unlikely to be any bilateral announcements from the talks.
Wall Street bounced back on Friday with the Dow and S&P 500 ending 5-day losing streaks as investors' hopes were boosted by upbeat earnings and encouraging economic data. The Dow jumped more than 2%, the S&P rose nearly 2%, and the Nasdaq finished up more than 1.75%. Economic data released on Friday surprised to the upside with stronger than expected retail sales for June. But Greg Swenson, founding partner at Brigg McAdam, said he was not impressed with that report.
I wouldn't get too excited about this rally. I think it's temporary. I would sell into it. You know, the number that is allegedly driving the rally today was retail sales up 1%. You know, but inflation was, you know, on Wednesday, CPI was up 1.1% month over month. So it doesn't really suggest a robust consumer. Yes, they're keeping up with inflation, but they're just buying the same products at higher prices. So I don't think it was as much belief that there's some good economic news. It was very average economic news, or neutral at best. I just think it's a bit of a short covering and a relief rally.
Shares of Citigroup soared more than 13% after posting quarterly profit that beat expectations, bucking the trend among big bank earnings reports. Wells Fargo said its quarterly profit was nearly cut in half due to increased loan loss provisions, but shares still rose more than 6%. United Health Group ended the session more than 5% higher after the healthcare company raised its annual profit forecast for the second straight quarter. And shares of Pinterest jumped more than 16% after the Wall Street Journal reported that activist investor Elliott Management had accumulated a stake of more than 9% in the company.
On this vote, the yeas are 223, the nays are 205. The bill is passed.
The U.S. House of Representatives passed legislation to safeguard a woman's right to travel across state lines to seek an abortion. The Ensuring Access to Abortion Act was brought to the floor Friday after several states banned abortion in the wake of last month's Supreme Court ruling.
Just 3 weeks ago, the Supreme Court took a wrecking ball to the fundamental rights by overturning Roe v. Wade.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi stood with fellow Democrats on the steps of the U.S. Capitol before the vote.
Democrats will not stop ferociously defending freedom for women and for every American. The message from the House Democrats and our groups here today is we are not going back. We are not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back.
But despite the bill's passage in the House, it still faces a major obstacle in the evenly divided Senate, where Republicans blocked similar legislation a day earlier. Roughly a dozen Republican-led states have moved to ban nearly all abortions, with some states trying to go even further. Missouri legislators recently considered a bill that would allow civil lawsuits against anyone who aids a woman in seeking an out-of-state abortion. The issue received national attention, including from President Joe Biden, who last week expressed outrage over a 10-year-old rape victim who had to travel to Indiana for an abortion.
10 years old, raped, 6 weeks pregnant, already traumatized, was forced to travel to another state.
An Ohio man was charged this week for the rape. On Friday, a second bill was passed in the House.
The bill is passed
To ensure access to abortion. But a previous version of that measure has already failed this year in the Senate, and it's unlikely to go further this time around. Despite the roadblocks, voting on the bills is one of the few actions Democrats can take to show they are trying to protect abortion rights ahead of the November midterm elections. According to a recent Ipsos poll, some 55% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases.
American luxury shoppers traveling in Europe feel as if they've hit the jackpot. For the first time in 20 years, the euro and US dollar are nearly equal in value. The weak euro is tempting Americans like Shauna Wilson to splurge.
Because the euro and the dollar are about the same, it definitely encourages us to spend. It's like it's on sale here, so we're having no problem shopping.
Wilson is among many American tourists flocking to Paris's Avenue Montaigne this week, a strip of luxury stores which fronts designer brands such as Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and Gucci.
I'm very excited that our American dollar is so strong just when I'm coming to Europe.
For Americans, purchasing a Chanel bag here could be cheaper by $1,000 with savings from the exchange rate and tax refunds at the border on the way home. But Eric Norland, senior economist at the CME Group in London, warns it's not as simple as it seems.
My own personal observation with luxury brands is that the prices of those goods tends not to vary from one country to another as much as you might expect. And another thing for Americans to consider if they're expecting bargains in Europe is that in Europe in general, there's much higher value-added taxes than there are in the US. Now that said, Americans who do shop over here can often get value-added tax rebates when they leave. So that's also something to look into. So there might be a lot of calculations to make in terms of trying to find bargains, and it may not be as straightforward as people think.
On the flip side, European luxury shoppers like Sebastian Pazzi from Lyon, France, will feel a pinch at home and while traveling to the US.
Maybe we won't buy anything. In France, it's really expensive, that kind of brand, Chanel, Dior. And here today, normally it could be cheaper in US, but with the change rate, it's not possible. It's too expensive for us.
Some analysts say the parity could last for at least a couple of weeks.
The death of detained British aid worker Paul Urey in a breakaway region of eastern Ukraine sparked calls for accountability from the UK and a summoning of Russia's ambassador by the British Foreign Office. The self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic and a British charity both confirmed his death. The Russian-controlled DPR charged him with mercenary activities. The charity Presidium Network said he was a humanitarian worker without any military background. In a statement, British Foreign Secretary Liz Truss directed blame squarely at Russia, saying, "I am shocked to hear reports of the death of British aid worker Paul Urey while in the custody of a Russian proxy in Ukraine. Russia must bear the full responsibility for this." Presidium Network said Urey was detained in late April after trying to help a woman travel out of the territory. It noted Urey had diabetes, which required insulin injections. The DPR insists he got appropriate care before he died on July 10th. With some men caught fighting sentenced to death and others held without charge in the entity, Presidium Network's Director of Operations, Dominic Byrne, suggested politics could be involved.
There's been reports from both the family and from the government in the past that they were putting some pressure on, and especially looking at some prisoner swaps and really increasing that pressure. And they've been doing this for some time with other captives as well. So yeah, they are really using these personnels as political pawns within this conflict, which is absolutely disgraceful. And we can completely condemn that as well.
Burns said what Urey's family is calling for now is the return of his body to Britain.